My name is Kevin. This is my project for my final project for Mastering Electronics. So what I created was essentially an equalizer circuit that has two key options, which is basically a bass booster and as well as a treble booster. So this is the actual sort of schematic here. I'm gonna give an actual LT Spice schematic in my report, but this is just tentative for now. So I'll just walk you through it real quick. Here's my input. It first goes through will be this preamp here. This is a non-inverting op amp. So what that means is that the ratio of the two resistors is equal to the negative gain. So in this case, it's approximately 2. It's as close to 2 as I could have gotten. So that's again for the preamp. Since after speaking to the TA, he told me that typically with the input of speakers and stuff, or like inputs of cables and just in general with audio, they typically needed a preamp. So that's the first part. Then it's fed into either the top portion of the circuit, which is essentially the bass booster, or the bottom portion of the bass of the circuit, which is a treble booster. And the way you determine which one you want is simply by hitting these two switches. They just sort of represent an actual switch, but I just didn't have one for this lab, so I represented it with in this case. So, as you can see, for as of right now, it's sort of hooked up to the bass booster circuit. So basically from here, this op amp, it goes up here, and then it's fed through the very first actual active filter that'll basically just get all the high frequencies and then filter them out through this capacitor. And the lower frequencies will actually get fed through this amp here. And I calculated my F3dB to be approximately 250 hertz. So anything below that will be passed through. And then after that, they're fed into this next op amp, which has a gain of 1, and I'll explain why that is for just a second. But then after that, it's fed into a potentiometer with variable resistance. So then that way you could sort of vary the actual gain you want and the amplitude of the actual output. And then there has a corresponding LED with it to show you, how intense the actual amplification is going to be. And then same idea with the bottom portion of the circuit. If you were to hook it up with, I would simply disconnect this wire and connect this wire. And then it goes through the exact same thing with the high pass filter. The F3dB for this one is 2 kilohertz. So anything above that will be going through this side of the circuit. And basically same idea. All the lower frequencies below that get fed through this resistor and then get taken out, and then everything that's above it gets filtered through and goes onto the circuit. Again, a ratio of 1 here, so then that way we have the true sort of amplitude from before, and then it's fed through. Then we have I forgot to mention this earlier, but basically these two are fed together with a summer circuit, and then ultimately the summer circuit is your output, and that just it's tied to the two LEDs and as well as the potentiometer. So then that way, when you change the value of the potentiometer, the essentially the intensity of the LED would change, as well as the amplification of the gain. So that's the first part. And then here you can see the actual circuit, same idea. Here's my input jack. Right now I'm measuring it, so this is what this measurement is for. And then this is the first, the preamp. These are my two circuits. This is again the bass booster, and this is the treble booster. This is the op amp. This is the op amp, and they're pretty much fed through. This is the final summer circuit, and then as well as you can see the LED here and here. And the potentiometer is right there. I'll give a demonstration in the next portion in just a second. So now I'll be showing you the bass booster option for this equalizer. So basically what that means is that we're gonna have our preamp connected to the bass booster side of the circuit, represented by this white connection here. The red one is the one for the treble. It's currently disconnected, and basically we're gonna be inputting low frequency wave just to see how it reacts to it. And that will be measured by the actual probes. As we both noticed in the demonstration, sort of the actual audio input and the speaker output wasn't the best way to show the circuit at work. So just for the purpose of that, I would simply be measuring it with an actual probe. So yeah, basically I have my input going in. Same idea as I mentioned before. It's going through the top half of the circuit. So now as I adjust the actual potentiometer, you'll see that the amplification will change. The output is the blue line here, and the yellow is the input. So you'll notice that when I adjust this potentiometer, that will change. If I could do this with one hand, sorry. But you can see it starting to grow slowly but surely. And now it's like hitting 1.5. And then as well as we can see that, look, I'll show you a little better visual with just the LED. But the LED does get brighter as well as dimmer depending on how I do it. If I decrease, you'll see that it decreases as well. And it just kind of dims down. And then now the actual amplitude is below 1.5. So that's the bass booster option. I'll demo the treble booster in just a second. So just before I get into the treble booster, I did want to just show real quick that this is exactly the setup that I had just before I filmed this. But I just want to show how the circuit reacts if I were to inject a higher frequency as opposed to something above our 3 dB. So as you can see, currently it is at a sort of 150, which is usual of a sort of bassy sound in a song. And as you can see, the amplification is around 1.5 just right now, the way I have the potentiometer set up. But if I have it something more typical of the higher range or in the mid range, and I inject that, you'll see that the actual amplification drops by quite a bit. It actually even lowers it in this case. So now I'm going to get into the treble booster. So now this is a treble booster sort of equalizer portion of the actual circuit. So now we have it set up again in the high pass portion. So what that means is that we're gonna have our input going from the preamp now to the actual bottom half of the circuit. So as you can see, that's described by this red wire here. The bass booster connection is now disconnected. Exact same idea as above. I am starting to realize that I'm a little bit over time. It's now being about 8 minutes. So same idea. Now we have the, again, same output as well. So in this case, I might inject something that's within our 3 dB range. 2.5 kilohertz is typical of a treble frequency for any kind of music. And so as you can see, it's the exact same idea. If I were to adjust this, I'm sorry, it's difficult to do with one hand. If I adjust this, the brightness corresponds with the amplitude as well, and the change. So that's just kind of the last portion of my circuit, I believe. And I just want to wrap this up pretty quick. But again, thank you for watching, and yeah.